Here we are. We're live. Hello, everybody.
Hi.
We are doing some pitch slapping today. Pitch slapping is the thing that we do when we do the pitch slapping the pitches. Yes, it's been a while since we've been out there slapping pitches, so there have been pitches just unslapped.
Yes.
Are you frozen, Justin? No.
I don't feel like I am.
You were for a second, but it was a great expression on your face for being frozen.
Oh, nice.
So this week on Pitch Slapping, for those of you who do not know what we do, basically we just try to pitch movie ideas or TV ideas kind of out of the blue with your suggestions, with the suggestions of watchers. So if you're watching this live on Thursday evening, 8 p.m., we are asking for suggestions. And what we're going to be doing is reimagining. We're doing some reimagining. Yes, reimagining. Yes, thank you. Reimagining. And I would like to point out that in my mind, reimaginings are not really reboots. A reboot is oftentimes a reimagining. Oftentimes they are taking a lot of elements, but they're really just giving you a new form of the story. In my version of reimagining, it's taking inspiration from a story and making it your own, giving it a true reimagining. Oftentimes when I watch people remake movies, I oftentimes say, well, you didn't need to remake that movie. Why didn't you take the elements that you liked of the movie you made or the movie that was original and expand on that? I would much prefer seeing a sequel or a different story told in the same universe. Then I want to see a good movie redone. And I can't tell you how many times watching redos and reboots of movies that just pale in comparison to the originals. Coming to mind is the RoboCop, when they decided to make RoboCop again.
Yeah.
It was a mistake to begin with, thinking that you're going to do it, and then it was poorly done. Hellboy, that was just done recently. Ron Perlman's Hellboy is kind of untouchable, and you should probably not
just let it be. Yeah,
just let it be. And there's been all this buzz about a Princess Bride reboot, which hurts a lot.
I will say I think the reboot is actually just like a live event. They're not actually redoing it.
No, they're not redoing it. It's actually an homage. It's a bunch of different celebrities doing their favorite scenes, which I can get behind. That I can get behind. I could not get behind somebody saying, you know what movie wasn't quite all that? Princess Bride. We should remake that.
I heard recently I didn't hear it, I read it. A recent odd reboot of Death Becomes Her. They're remaking Death Becomes Her.
I see things like that. It's very peculiar. I think recently they made What Men Want, which was a remake of What Women Want with Mel Gibson, which was only a passable movie to begin with. and it's like, I don't know. It seems like grasping at straws.
Yes.
So what we're really doing is we're talking about movies that inspired us, and an interesting thing to do, because I say this all the time. It's like, why don't you take a bad movie? Why don't you take a movie that didn't work and try to take the elements of the things that didn't work and put them in a story that does work? So that's in my reboot fantasy, and we'll probably do that particular reboot fantasy in the future. But this is taking elements from stories that we all know and we all appreciate and kind of hammering them. An example that I like to use is The Truth About Cats and Dogs. I don't know if any of you have seen The Truth About Cats and Dogs. It's a wonderful movie. Janine Garofalo, Uma Thurman, some British pretty boy. And it was Cyrano de Bergerac. And it was an updated, modern Cyrano de Bergerac. And I thought it was wonderful. And that's the kind of reimagining that I would like to do. So if you're watching and you can type on your typers. Go ahead and start talking about your favorite stories. Now, these could be fairy tales, bedtime stories. These can be myths and mythology. These can be movies that you love or hate. Even let's hear what you've got out there that you think had a good strong base, and then we will create a new story using the ingredients. One of those great comments that everybody talks about is there's only 7 storyline, or there are only 7 stories. And a lot of people are like, well, there's only one story, and there's a lot of arguing on that. I understand the mentality behind that, but I also think no, there's plenty of stories. I mean, Back to the Future.
Back to the Future, yes.
Back to the Future is a great. It has great elements to it that deserve like an examining, and I want to say that basically Rick and Morty, the cartoon,
right, is a reimagining,
basically a inspired by Back to the Future.
I could see I'm very happy with what I haven't seen it, of course, no one has, but I'm really happy with what it looks like they've done with Ghostbusters, where it's like
Years in the Future.
Yes,
yeah.
I could see a Back to the Future, like one of Doc Brown's children finding the DeLorean packed away somewhere, and then adventures ensue.
Yeah, exactly. And I even think that you if you were to, and mind you, this is not a reimagining, this is a sequel.
Right. Yeah.
The idea of a Marty McFly who saw a future that never happened.
Mm.
And, and he's living going, it's now 2020 and none of the things that I saw came to pass.
Right.
The hoverboards and all this, what happened? And it's like, well, there was a breakdown. You have to live through time in order to experience time. If you just go hopping, then possibilities become realities and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Lots of really good stuff. And I would dare say that a story I would tell based on this, a reimagining that has nothing to do with Back to the Future, but the element of it is so interesting, is the disgraced nuclear physicist who ends up teaching like at a local high school.
Right.
Befriending kind of this loser kid, and I think there's something there that could make a great story. Like if you want to tell a story, I would say the story of a guy who doesn't have anything in his life, nothing that mattered, and he lost everything that was important to him, becomes a mentor to this kid who is equally aimless when it comes down to it. And so I think there's a good story in there, because ultimately they never explained their friendship at all. They never tipped into the idea of why Marty could just walk into Doc's house and play. Yeah. Why they have such a close relationship, and it could be speculated pretty evilly as to what the nefarious relationship might be. But that would be I think my pitch is to tell the story of a teacher who is lost on his own and sees this struggling kid and finds not only himself but this kid's future.
That's a dang good reimagining. Yeah,
Hannah Glass has thrown her out.
Thrown her out.
Aren't you in Orlando, Hannah?
I think she is.
Did you go to Orlando? I thought I saw.
Like in Disneyland right now with her phone.
You
watching
can't be at the happiest place on earth and watching pitch slapping. But
the perfect combination.
Thank you so much for coming. Her was a great story about a guy who fell in love with Siri.
Yes.
And the thing that I really love about her was it was actually kind of sweet. It was very nice. I would turn it into a horror movie. I would have basically a Siri that becomes jealous of the man. That the man has no idea that Siri is cognitive and in love with him. and slowly but surely like destroys his credit and destroys his life and gets rid of all the people in his life and this vast network. And in the end, it's kind of a accept the role as the king of the earth because you control all computers because they're in love with you, or die, that kind of thing.
Yes, a little lawnmower man in there, almost.
Right, it's a little lawnmower man, which I always thought was a reimagining of Flowers for Algernon.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Because it was a simple man who got all the stuff. Hannah also threw out Peter Pan, which is my jam. I'm all about reimagined Peter Pans.
Yes.
And I think Peter Pan is kind of a creepy character when you think about it. For people who don't know the full story of Peter Pan actually would fly dead children halfway to heaven. That was his whole purpose. It was a book called Little White Bird, which came before Peter Pan, which explained how Peter Pan became Peter Pan and how he was entrusted with flight and all these things.
He said it was his jam. He knows.
I know myself, and I love Peter Pan. I'm a huge Peter Pan fan. And Hook himself is actually quite scary. He's actually a pretty tyrannical character who murders, freely and talks about it all the time. And one of my favorite terms or turns of phrases about Hook was that he was the only man that old Barbecue feared. And Barbecue is the nickname of Long John Silver.
Oh.
So the only man that Long John Silver feared was Captain James Hook. So there's plenty of horror routes that you can go with Peter Pan, because ultimately there's nothing scarier than an ancient child. Because there's so much passion and fury and wisdom without maturity is so dangerous. Oh, indeed. Hannah tells us that she indeed was.
Yay!
Yay!
Congrats. For Peter Pan, I like the idea of Peter Pan. Okay, what if Hook wasn't a horrible person, but Pan was, and Pan was making everyone believe that Hook was this horrible monster of a man, and so you see it through Hook trying to plead his case that he's not a horrible man, while this child that everyone believes is telling what awful things he's done. He's a pirate. I'm not a pirate. What are you talking about?
Well, and I think there's something interesting about the idea of Peter Pan, by his actions, is just like Captain Hook. Peter Pan kills indiscriminately, hunts Indians, does the whole 9 yards, does all the things that pirates do, but because he's a boy, it's called precocious. And when an adult does it, and it's funny because there was like a movie with George Clooney where I think it was Michelle Pfeiffer says, "You've got a Peter Pan complex," and he says, "Well, you got a Captain Hook complex." And I always thought that a Peter Pan complex is actually a Captain Hook complex. Because Peter Pan actually literally doesn't grow up. Captain Hook wishes to remain a child, wishes to remain, in a place he doesn't belong. He's outgrown childish things, but he still does them. He still, rides around. He still sleeps with a teddy bear. He still has all these childish things. But foregoing that, Hook as a horror figure would be amazing.
Yeah.
If Hook were after you, he'd be like a Freddy Krueger. He'd be this hook-handed man.
He's the hook-handed man.
Right, who would just show up at a moment's notice and do all kinds of horrible things. So Peter Pan is scary because he basically steals children. That's kind of his thing. So yes, moving on, we've got Kevin, who says Home Alone. Home Alone is such a strange
Home Alone
today's world, because I don't think you can pull it off because of interconnectivity and internet, and everybody has a phone, and it just I don't see how you could leave some. And mind you, even back then, it was a stretch that you could accidentally.
It was a stretch.
Yeah.
You would have to do it now with a dog. The dog is home alone, and he's never been home alone before. And then they break in. Airbud, home alone.
And he sets up all these booby traps, and Joe Pesci, who's in his 80s now, is like, eh.
He's a dog catcher. He's that dog catcher that's a dog catcher because he hates dogs. So he just goes around sneaking into houses and stealing people's dogs.
Although if you wanted to go like a dark route, you could get away with it if you were just an abusive, horrible family. If it were parents who were like, you stay home and you take care of, we're going out, and they just leave and they abandon a child in the house, and he uses his, backwoods wiles to protect himself. And you could actually turn that into a pretty solid murder horror movie, slasher movie.
Yeah, you could.
A boy who's protecting himself from like a gang of, mutants or just, a gang who show up.
If you just turn down the lights and change the contrast on Home Alone, it just becomes a horror movie.
That's fair. Play dark music in the background. Kevin also said Parasite. And yes, I would love to, but I also feel like Parasite is new enough that there's a lot of people who haven't seen it. And I do not want to discuss a lot of Parasite because it's free. If you haven't seen Parasite, it's free on Amazon Prime or Hulu, one of them. Possibly both of them. Go watch it. It's amazing. It's an incredible movie. I don't want to spoil it for people. So we'll stick to a slightly older stories, but Parasite is a good movie. I strongly suggest watching.
There you go.
Comes up with Rocky. Rocky has an amazing story. And you could do this over and over and over again. He's the underdog who comes in, trains hard, and wins a emotional victory, if not the legitimate and actual victory. And I think the way to do a Rocky story now is probably MMA, to go the mixed martial arts route. And actually any competition that you can think of could be a Rocky story.
Really, all the movies about competitions are Rocky movies. That's kind of the storyline. I would like to see one with a professional wrestler.
I think that professional wrestler is good because you could add in the, okay, you're the heel. Okay, you have to lose this fight. You have to fight to get to here. You have to do these things. I think there's something in the idea of telling the story of a professional wrestler who learns that he's not allowed to win.
Yes, that he wants to be that America's favorite Hulk Hogan, don't do drugs, go to school. He wants to be that figure, but he ends up getting the script as the bad guy.
Yeah, being the bad guy. Yeah. Yeah, because I think there was a documentary of the Iron Sheik, which was wonderful, but also kind of heartbreaking because he was a nice guy who they turned into really the face of villainy in the 80s. He was just the absolute just a horrible villain and a horrible racial stereotype. And it was that's the 80s for you. Fascinating to think about it because he was asked to portray the worst qualities of an entire faith and race, and I think that has its merit. So I agree. I think wrestling might be the perfect place to tell a Rocky story in which the person has to emotionally win while physically losing. Yeah,
the scenes of going out in public and people booing and throwing stuff at him because he's the bad guy.
Heartbreaking. Yeah. When his dream was to be cheered.
Yeah.
Heaney. Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Okay, it's in Rhode Island, and it's a circular saw.
That's it. Buzzsaw Massacre.
And it's not so much a massacre, it's just really awful.
Well, you know, what's interesting is Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I can't remember if it was the first one or the second one, but they basically put one of those disclaimers based on a true story.
Right.
And it was like, what true story? What do you mean? You can't just say based on a true story and then have me watch this movie and then wonder. And this was before the internet, so you
couldn't just Google it.
Google it. You had to sit and stew in the idea that somehow this is a true story. And then,
that
of course,
probably happened in your hometown.
Right,
That's
exactly.
what you're thinking.
Texas. It was your own backyard. Whoa. Which, getting back to it, is I love the construct and concept of framing something as a true story. And I think there are movies that do this where they're like, you know, I thought it was an urban legend, but it turned out to be a true story, and this is it. Right. I want to say there is one, Cropsey, I think it's called, where it's a documentary where these people are looking at this urban legend, and then they peel it back and find out that it was true, and you know, it was the boogeyman of the town, and it becomes real. But I think that if you wanted to really revamp or reimagine Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I would say have a horribly violent movie that was just depraved and sick, because when Texas Chainsaw Massacre came out, it was so visceral and so crazy. Yeah. And so if the story was, oh no, you know, this horrible event was true, watch a movie. I'd love to watch a movie where people are like, let's find out where that is. And they do the research on the internet and find out it was their hometown, and find out that it happened, you know, not too far from them. And then they go out to the place and have this horror experience based on watching a horror movie. And
exactly what we thought was happening when we were kids.
Yes, exactly. I
know what house it is.
Whenever I saw it, it's a true story. Because there were several movies in the 80s that did this. Serpent and the Rainbow was one, where it's like based on a true story, and you're like, what?
How is this based on a true story?
This can't be based on a true story. So had a glass as the brave little toaster.
Okay, I've got that. You ready?
I'm listening.
Instead of a brave little toaster, it's a cowboy doll and like a space toy action figure.
I think
we call it Toy Story. Genius.
I'm going to run that past legal real quick, and we'll see. We'll see how that plays out. Well, and as you know, toasters don't have the same relevance they did when Brave Little Toaster came out. I believe that somewhere it would be like a Brave Little Instapot now.
Nope. Well, do that story. Do the story of the appliance with feelings that is now obsolete.
The obsolete. Oh, see, that's terrifying.
Little
toaster. Here we have Big. There are so many versions of the child and the adult.
Right.
And mind you, a lot of them are body switchies.
Freaky Friday.
Freaky Fridays. There was 13 going on 30, which had a lot of the similar feel to Big. And it was something that I think would be more like, I would probably try the reverse, where a 40-year-old man wakes up and he's a 12-year-old boy again. And
we all think we want it.
Yeah. You know, and to you know, go back and relive that summer, that one magic summer, and then through the eyes of an adult realize that summer wasn't great. and it wasn't, as magic as
Right.
it was. So, I think that there's a lot to go on. I would definitely think about. So my pitch is a 40-year-old man wishes himself into the best year of his life, and without the veneer of childhood protecting him from the trouble that his parents were going through, and the pain around him, and the friends who were suffering and he didn't notice, and all these things. Because I think we're all selfish as children, not purposefully, but we don't have a well-developed conscience of other people, and it would be interesting to see this kid go back and think that it was his glory days, and learn that he was a bully, and learn that he was mean, and that and that the people that he fondly remembers did not connect with him the way that he thought they did. Well, now I'm
right.
I just oppressed myself. I saw this. Hey, Patrick, good to see you. I love this. I love this idea. The thing that I love the most about it is the concept of hiring a giant bunny and like putting him in a mall, and and it's like just sitting there, and people are taking pictures with it, and they're like, "This is a really lifelike looking bunny you've got here," and it's just like. And it just kind of cracks me up to think, that it's because I would not want it to speak. I would not want it to have like any cognitive abilities.
No, it would just be like a giant bunny. It would not be cartoony.
No. Well, I would want it to be in a man shape. I would like it to be like what would ultimately be horrifying in any other regard. I'd like to put children in its lap, and they look up, and it's just like, sharp, glistening teeth and red eyes,
beady red eyes staring down. Red eyes.
They're like, "This is the meaning of Easter." It's like, oh, what happened? Oh, well, it was a pagan ritual that brought the money to us. So you're right in a lot of ways. That could be a wonderful, campy, fun movie where these kids are like, I'm telling you, what in Animaniacs, wasn't there a rooster? And there's always
not a man, he's a chicken, boo.
And this one kid who's like, "It's a chicken!" And everyone's like, "What are you talking about?" That's wrong with you. I would pay money to see a Chicken Boo movie, but this could be a solid substitute.
Chicken Boo. Mm-hmm.
Chicken Boo. The Island. I'm guessing this is the Scarlett Johansson and Ewan McGregor movie, which actually at the core of it, so many stories could come from, which is people who are grown for their parts, so that there could be transplants and
right.
So they're actually kept in peak physical condition, but kept very innocent of the world. They don't know a lot because they're really just there to have their organs harvested. There was an excruciatingly sad movie called Never Let Me Go. Do not watch this movie. It will hurt you. It will hurt you in ways you don't understand. It was literally about people who were born for their organs, and then at a certain age, they just start harvesting them. And it was about people who thought that if they could prove that they were in love, they would be allowed to have a little extra time together, and not like live, just like a little more time. And then what you learn is that that was just some fairy tale that they told themselves. That is told because hope is like a virus that comes in the darkest times, and people spread it. and it doesn't help. So don't watch
You
this
tell
movie.
us not to watch it. You tell us not to watch it, and then you give us the entire synopsis of the film.
Trust me, the synopsis is like Mary Poppins compared to watching it. Watching it was truly one of the most horrifying emotional roller coasters I've ever had at a movie.
Yay.
And by roller coaster, I mean it just went straight down. Just, there was no like, it's just like, and then never stopped. You're just like,
It never goes back up.
It never goes back up. Just down and down and down. And then at the bottom, you get out and you're like, well, you have to climb your way back out.
Because you're going to do this again.
Or if you just want to go home. So the island, any story in which people are born for a function, and that function is beyond their ability to control, I think you have a great story. You have a story of human struggle. You have a story of hope. You have a story of fighting and trying to figure it out. The World According to Garp was really such a great book, and then an immense movie. And you know, I didn't understand. I watched this originally when I was very young, and I didn't completely grasp what it was. And even to this day, I couldn't really tell you. It became more and more philosophical than anything else, more and more allegorical than anything else. But I think that at the heart, there is this construct of the wonder of being, the wonder of being alive, and the immense events that have to happen in order for the moments of your life to occur. I like the idea that we are destined for something, and that there's a machination that recognizes us and understands our path and doesn't put obstacles in our way as much as finds the path for us. An obstacle is maybe not what stops you, but kind of veers you into the direction you're supposed to be in, or gives you the option, right, at least to course correct, as it were. Roller buggy. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, you stumped me on that one.
Roller boogie, which I also don't know what it is. Roller. What is the movie with James Caan, and it was like a death roller derby that had roller in it, didn't it? I think they remade that too.
Yes.
Was it rollerball?
Oh, rollerball. I think it was rollerball, wasn't it?
I like the idea of roller buggy. I have no idea what it is though. Footloose. I was actually just talking about
Footloose.
The concept, because there's an episode of Avatar, which is basically Footloose. In Avatar: The Last Airbender, they come to a Fire Nation town where they're not allowed to dance. And it spurred the conversation of Footloose. I think that any story that deals with a governing power suppressing a creative element, I think there's something to that. Like, it would be interesting to do a kind of a dystopic world, like Equilibrium. Equilibrium is like the nth degree of this, because Equilibrium suggested that all art, all emotion was detrimental to the human condition. That art inspires people to be passionate, and passion leads to violence, and so on and so forth. And I think there's something about the idea of suppressing art and watching the revolution that comes from the suppression of art. So I would definitely look into that storyline. Like maybe when I was a kid, I heard a story about a prisoner. He was put in prison. Can't remember like all of it, but it was along the lines of they took away his visual art, they took away his music, they gouged out his eyes and made him deaf and blah blah blah. But he still lived to the end of his life because in his mind they couldn't take away his creative spirit. Why those kinds of stories would be told to me at a young age, I don't know, but there you have it. I kind of remember. Patrick Saxon may be onto something though. Gone in 60 Seconds, but with golf carts. Gone in about 4 minutes. I think if you did a Fast and the Furious, Gone in 60 Seconds kind of thing in a retirement community.
Yes.
And you used, golf carts as the main thing that you got around on. And you had these, cool hipster, tricked out. These old folks who still fight each other and say all the things that you would hear in these movies, but they're literally in their 80s or 70s.
The slow and the grumpy rather than the
slow
Fast and the Furious.
Grumpy. That is the parody we need.
Florida Drift.
The slow and the grumpy.
That's me.
I was going to say, unfortunately, that's not an age. That can happen at any time. You can be slow and grumpy at any age.
Yeah, that's just me.
Yes, indeed. So if you're still out there, what we're doing is we're talking about reimagining. Reimagining being a tool used in writing, but I don't want to remake a story. I don't want to use the same characters. I don't want to use the same. I don't want it to be a reboot or a sequel or things like that. I would like to say, here's a story, a classic story, and you can use fairy tales, you can use bedtime stories, you can use myths, favorite mythology, things of that nature. And we've been getting a lot of good movies. Groundhog Day is actually nightmarish to me, and I would almost want to go like a nightmare route with Groundhog Day. And I want to say there's a movie called Happy Birthday to Me, which is kind of
an Adam Sandler movie now? Adam Sandler and some woman with him are Groundhog Daying together?
I don't know. Maybe. It seems like something that could happen.
Yeah, it definitely has horror movie potential, living the same day over and over again, especially if you happen to live because he's living this day in this small town over and over again. What if it was one of the worst days of your life? What if it was that day that your family got in a car accident or, some horrible, awful thing that you were living over and over and over again? That's definitely got horror movie potential.
It's funny. Kevin Young says Memento, and Trick says 50 First Dates. Memento and 50 First Dates actually have the same central plot character point, which is the person wakes up and has no memory of anything. Mm-hmm. Actually, I guess in Memento, he's actually complete amnesiac. In 50 First Dates, she cannot create new memories at all. So she remembers everything to a point and then nothing else. Or I want to say in Memento, he was a complete amnesiac who every morning had a clean slate, which also brings up Clean Slate, which was a Dana Carvey. But I think in the construct of waking up with no memory every day, I almost wonder if it wouldn't be interesting to introduce a supernatural element where someone is just stealing your memories every night. Every time you go to sleep, someone comes and physically steals your memories, and then you're trying to find the memory thief.
I'm stuck on horror movies now. So in my head, so what if the person who woke up with a new memory was a serial killer?
There you go.
Because the last thing they had before they lost their memory was the idea that they were going to kill someone. And they had, worked in their mind, it's just once, I'll never do it again. And then they end up being a serial killer unintentionally.
I like that. Well, and Memento had an interesting kind of a piece to that. Spoiler alert: if you haven't seen Memento, I'm about to spoil it. So you put your fingers in your ears and go la 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 la. Memento had that. Have you not seen it? Have you not seen it?
I haven't seen it. I assume it has something to do with candy and Diet Coke, but go on.
Those are Mentos. Those are just not Mementos. Mentos.
Oh,
We'll discuss Memento after Justin has watched it. Clue. Clue. Here's what I would like to do if I were going to do a reimagining. Is I would have a serial killer who does all of the killings in the game of Clue.
Ooh.
Like literally, it's like, well, he hung this person in a library. He stabbed that person in a kitchen. He shot that person in a parlor. But these are all different houses, and so like they're literally trying to put it all together. And all they get is like, well, we got some. It looks like orangish fabric. And you find out that he's literally killing people by Clue rules. He basically
dressing as the characters,
right? And all of them are Mr. Bodies. They're all.
Yeah.
So that would be my Clue. Pitch is a kind of a 7, mystery where you're following the detectives, and you would keep it from the audience as much as you could. You would like literally not let the audience know as long as you can, and hope that people don't blab it on the internet.
Those were the days.
Monkey's Paw. See, that's awesome. Monkey's Paw has always been the deal with the devil that goes wrong, the wish that is corrupted, the corruptible wish. Mm-hmm. I think those are great plot line because no matter how innocent a wish can be, to find the way that it is twisted and messed up, I think that would be a fun journey as a writer and a really fun journey as an audience.
Yeah, I really like the idea of the curses actually bringing them good fortune. That's fun. That's a fun twist.
That is really fun.
And then he finally realizes, the guy who's wishing finally realizes that he does wish good things for them, and so he starts wishing good things for them, and then it all just goes downhill.
That's an interesting one too. Is the fact that the curse cannot give you what you want.
Yeah,
because it's Dr. Faustus. Good call, Hannah. The Monkey's Paw and Dr. Faustus kind of in my mind have a similar bent, which is the devil will give you what you ask for, but never what you want.
Right.
That kind of concept. I like that. Modern Knights of the Round Table.
Oh, yes.
I'm all about that. I think that's a great storyline. There was a movie recently called The Kid Who Would Be King, which was kind of a modern telling of the concept. But I think that I've always been fascinated by the title, The Once and Future King, because we haven't really seen the future king part of it yet. And I would love to examine the story of a man who one day is just basically given Excalibur and said, okay, you're king. And he's like, king of what? And they're like, oh, by the way, it was never supposed to be the King of England. England, just when we did this the first time, there was no way to establish communication with the world. You're the king of the world. The concept of Camelot being the world, the kingdom of the world,
Right.
and then the kind of political intrigue and the kind of militaristic, frou-for-all that goes with that. It's like who would bow to a king? And he's like, well, he's got magic, he's got all this incredible proof that he deserves to be in charge. And there's something there. There's something in the storytelling of, if somebody were to arrive and be ordained by God to be king, how would the world react? How would the world, it'd be very interesting to see what evangelicals would do with somebody who's like, I've been ordained by God. And, and listen to me now, and things like that. It would be an interesting social commentary if the skies parted and a voice came booming down from heaven, and it was like, Jim, you're king, and everybody's like, I heard that, but I'm reserving my my opinion.
He still owes me some money. I'm not really,
Slumdog Millionaire. I think anything that deals with somebody in abject poverty with an opportunity to become fabulously wealthy, walking the tightrope between those two, all the emotional aspects of it. It's interesting because I was thinking this when I was watching Ready Player One, the movie of the book. And by the way, there's a Ready Player 2 coming out.
Really?
The book is coming out this fall.
I read the first book. I enjoyed the book. I didn't see the movie because I enjoyed the book so much.
Yeah, no, it was not a good representation of the book. But back to it, I thought this was kind of a Slumdog Millionaire construct, which is also kind of a King Arthur construct. A person from
the Last Starfighter construct.
Last Starfighter. I love Last Starfighter because of the line. I mean, I loved it for lots of reasons, but I love the line where they asked him how he got him and said, "Did you do the Excalibur test?" He was like, "No, it was a video game." And I was like, "That's pretty intense and amazing."
Okay, let's take the Slumdog Millionaire thing. Somebody who is in poverty and has the chance to become great because of this elves and the shoemaker situation. They have these creatures who create this mega fashion for them.
I think that there's something really interesting about like the elves and the shoemaker in modern day, and there being like this sweatshop rumors, and and maybe the elves go on a union strike, or something where they're like, we don't get paid anything. Well, you're magical creatures. What do you want to get paid? What do you mean? What do we want to get? We want to get paid what everybody else wants to get. Just because we're magic doesn't mean we don't want to buy things.
I still have to have meals.
Yeah. I think that that would be interesting, especially if it was like some ace reporter who like stumbled into the factory and then gets the story from the elves who are like, we were just doing a favor, and the next thing we know,
we've been doing this for 20 years now.
Field of Dreams. What a weird movie.
That was a weird movie.
It was a strange movie. And I remember like the first time I watched it, I was just like, oh, wow. That's awe. And then I actually just last week watched it. And I was like,
really?
What? It was just on TV. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? What the actual hell? And then it seemed, oddly enough, to end right at the beginning of whatever was happening.
Right.
Like, it's like we watched this whole movie, and it's like, I don't think the movie needs to be about, the reunion with his father, because at the end of the movie, there's like millions of cars descending on the small, tiny farm to watch dead people play football, baseball. It just doesn't. Having said that,
Well, there's your story. There's your reimagining. This guy who's making money, making millions and millions of dollars because he owns the sports team named the Phantoms. This ghost baseball team that he sends across the country like the Harlem Globetrotters.
what about a guy who basically sells computer recreations of famous athletes doing sports and going up against people, only to learn that he's actually necromancing them and bringing them back and literally testing them? Field of nightmares is what that is. Field of horrors. I'm game for that. The Sorcerer's Apprentice about Oppenheimer and his assistant. I would watch that movie. I absolutely would. It hurts my heart whenever I think of Oppenheimer. There's a part of me that just hurts, because all I can think of is wild brilliance that set the world on fire, literally. And the weight of what happened and what he was responsible for. I think there's a lot of story to be told, and a lot of story that we don't get. Because I almost like Oppenheimer's ghost, a story where somebody is on the cusp of creating something so world-changing but horrible, the next level destruction event, and to have Oppenheimer's ghost show up and haunt them. I'm haunted by Oppenheimer all the time. I sense the deep tragedy that whole era seemed to carry. But then there's The Mask.
Okay. It's hard to reimagine The Mask. I love The Mask. I love the story of The Mask. I love the comics of The Mask. The son of The Mask was an abomination, but I'm a big fan of The Mask. It would be interesting to see a reimagining of it. I feel like somebody somewhere is working on it right now. I really do.
Well, and the thing that I loved about The Mask, the movie, was the human cartoon element. And I think that if I were to reimagine it, it would be about a person who either was a human cartoon, becomes a human cartoon, is a cartoon that became human. Because there's something super endearing about the wolf call and the heart bump, 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 and all of these things. And I would almost wonder, because there's a deep, deep story in The Mask. If you follow The Mask, and The Mask is like Loki, it was actually Loki's mask, and it's about being a trickster and imbuing godlike power to mortals and things like that.
It gets pretty dark.
Yeah. Stanley Ipkiss dies like in the comic books.
It's ugly.
Run, right? He doesn't last for long, and The Mask actually goes from hand to hand.
And that was actually one of my favorite parts of The Mask, was seeing The Mask on, because they only did it once on the dog and it was on the villain. I would love to see a story where somebody has this, realizes the powers, and they test people with it.
Right, sure.
They're trying to find the person that it works best with. So there's this foundation or whatever that has this object that gives people powers, but it differs so much from people to people that they're trying to find the one that will make it into this amazing heroic thing. And then this actually sounds like a television series, but
well, and the interesting thing is,
I would watch it,
is the concept of corruption. You give the mask to somebody in hopes that they'll become a hero. They put it on and they may start off heroic, but they'll always end up being corrupted. I think that
Yes.
that storyline could be really interesting, especially if it like results in their death. Like the only way you can have the mask and use the mask is either being just or dying.
Right.
And so if the series was literally like the top of the episode, a person gets the mask, and by the end of the episode, they die because you're looking for the person who can wear the mask and not die.
That sounds depressing now. Why do we keep getting depressing on everything?
I don't know. This won't be depressing. It's speed. Speed taught me how.
This time it's both.
Yeah. Speed taught me how to do a Keanu Reeves impersonation.
Oh yeah.
Yes. My Keanu Reeves impersonation is just one word, and it's not whoa. A lot of people are like, "Oh, it's whoa." It's like, no, it's not whoa.
Yeah.
My Keanu Reeves impersonation is this: situation.
It's fantastic. It is fantastic.
I can't do any other. Like, I can't talk like him, but I can say situation like him. Here's the situation. Because I think it's back. I think actually Keanu Reeves might have a higher voice.
Yeah.
And he actively keeps it down here to talk so that he's not, high pitched voice.
He actually has a high squeaky voice.
He has a high squeaky voice. That's my theory. He sounds like Elmo. And he has to push the back, push it back, down. Whoa. Situation.
So the obvious reimagining of Speed would be in a retirement community with golf carts. They have to go very, very slow if they
can't go over a certain speed.
Yeah.
I enjoy, and it's funny because I think there are a lot of movies that kind of copied this. There was a Jeff Bridges movie, which was like about a bomb disposal guy. And there was and one of the Die Hards, the one with Samuel L. Jackson, was a lot of running around with bombs and trying to solve riddles to stop bombs.
Crank, the Jason Statham movie,
where
he is the bus. Yeah, he's the bus.
He was the bus, and he couldn't let his pulse go down.
Yeah, because I was just about to pitch that, and then I realized it had already been done. Where somebody has to keep moving, but it's been done. It was Crank and Crank 2, I believe.
Crank and Crank 2. The first Crank was amazing. The second Crank was weird.
I don't think I saw the second one.
It was not great.
Imagine that.
In the first movie, he was falling to the earth.
Yes.
And in the second movie, he survived the fall. So that tells you everything you need to know.
There you go. There you go.
So yes, I think that any bomb or horrible event that is kept from happening because of a certain activity.
Mm-hmm.
I especially remember this because the Jeff Bridges movie, it was the person, there was a bomb tied to the computer, and they had to keep typing.
Ooh.
In order to keep it from exploding.
Oh,
and
wow.
So the person was typing. But the weird thing was they were using like the megabytes count of the typing to show you that it was, the bomb would go off if the megabyte count would. And it was like, well, that makes no sense. Just have pressure plates on the keyboards that, if you stop typing, it blows up.
Set a brick on it and walk away.
Well, I was thinking that it has to be types. You have to actually type the same sentence over and over again, or something like that. I don't know.
Anywho,
but yes, I think that Mad Bomber is an easy retelling. If you're going to retell the Speed story, it's really just about a Mad Bomber, and the methods by which you try to catch that Mad Bomber. In a lot of ways, Saw is similar to Speed in the sense that it is just kind of a genius malcontent that you have to figure out the riddles and all the things to stop. So, Who Framed Roger Rabbit needs no reimagining. It was pretty much flawless.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to reimagine. I mean, if the reimagination is just a guy and a cartoon doing something, that's fine. But I think that you had a whole package in Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
They tried to reimagine Roger Rabbit, and it ended up with Cool World.
That was
is what we got. What?
I said that was a mistake.
Yeah, there you go.
Actually, I did enjoy Cool World, to be honest. It was just it was a mistake. You know, you had this sense that it was not right. There was something wrong with it. Airplane. The problem with Airplane is it was so perfect for its time, and people have tried and tried and tried to recapture what it did.
It would be hard to do that again.
Be hard to do that today. Although we kind of need real good parody comedy because we lost it. You know, we've had such a long string of really crappy parody comedies. Some terrible ones. So I would say that because Airplane was actually a playoff of disaster movies of the 70s, you'd have to come up with like modern disaster movies and do a parody based on, you know, end of the world stuff, you know.
Right.
Like Armageddon and what was that? The meteor hitting the earth.
Deep Impact.
Deep Impact and Armageddon came out almost the same time.
Yes. But even then we're reaching back. That's not even like the kind of disastrous movies that.
Well, I can't even think of what the modern disaster movies are right now. It's been a while. Although we're due to have. Well, we are living in a disaster movie right now. So Tron.
Tron.
Tron was fantastic and made no sense.
It was beautiful in its nonsense.
It made no sense. I once tried to use all Tron, like all that I learned from watching Tron when I was 10. I tried to use my computer when I was 12. Nothing. I ruined that computer. That computer never worked again. It's like, I'm user 1. What are you talking about? Tron.
Computers are so vastly different now than they were at the time of Tron. It would be interesting to see a reimagining of it.
Well, you know, the recent Tron Legacy that came out was interesting because it was this revisit to that world built up. But I think that at the heart of Tron is a story about a man who gets sucked into the games he plays, basically, or the games he designed, really. So I think that there is probably where you want to go is telling stories. Tell a story about a man who gets stuck in the video game that he created,
which is almost easier to do now because they're so realistic now.
It's so realistic, and I think that it plays to this interesting world that if you sent a person into their video game, would they be surprised at the brutality and the horror that they created? And what if they were confronted by these people who had feelings and emotions and they're suffering and they watch their families die and they watched everything go wrong, and then they find that he's the one who wrote it, who made it the story.
Yeah, he's the one that made them these characters that were secondary to the story. They're collateral damage.
And it was the and people don't give Last Action Hero credit.
This is one of my favorite movies. I love Last Action Hero.
But there was this kind of heartbreaking scene where Arnold Schwarzenegger's character is like, sure, just throw my kid off the roof. You know, sure, just take my son and kill him because it makes good story.
Right.
You know, and I was like, that examination would be interesting because in Last Action Hero, he didn't get to confront the creator.
Mm-hmm.
He just got to confront the fact that he was an entertainment. But if
Right.
you put like the creator of a video game, and it's all like these sick, really weird monsters.
Right.
Some video games have monsters, and you're like, who made this? Why? Why is this the thing? Why are there intestines coming out of his butt with snake head? What is going on in that man's life that he created this creature? And then to have that guy in there and people looking at the monster and then looking at him and looking at the monster and being like, what? Why is this in your head?
What happened to you?
What happened to you? So that would be interesting too. The idea of the golden eggs not being golden eggs, but being creations.
Right.
Like, it'd almost be interesting if it were like a child painter whose work somehow caught fire and was selling and all these things, and the family just starts to like keep the child secluded and locked up, and it's like,
right,
a painting a day or you don't eat, but kind of that miserable setup of people who just leech off of talent.
Yeah,
which I hope to do one day. It is my intention to leech off my child's talent, and
it's a good intention. No, it's not.
So this is a great one. Star Wars: New Hope from the perspective of the Empire. So I actually have a script that I have sort of worked on, sitting in my computer somewhere, which is basically, and I didn't set it in the Star Wars universe, but it is the Star Wars universe. It is, a perfect facsimile of the Star Wars universe, but it's basically the idea of like, if you're building the Death Star, you need to get all this material together. And what if you're like a truck driver, a space trucker, who's just, trucking his stuff to this place, and he's just dropping it off and going back and forth, and that's just his thing. And meanwhile, there's like a horrible war going on, and there's explosions off the distance, there's all this stuff. But it doesn't affect him. He's a trucker. I just truck things, truck. And
just taking I-beams. Yeah.
He learns that he's delivering all the components to this horrible weapon. And in my mind, the story, and this was like before Rogue One ever came up, but in my mind, the story is about how this trucker ultimately ends up giving the information over, like ultimately saying, well, I did send a single, vent exhaust port, and,
right.
and like delivering that information in hopes of saving people.
I always like the idea of the story, and it would work in this a little bit. I always like the idea of the story of the villain, who is 100% sure that they are not the villain. It's one of my favorite story lines. And I could see this, that it's somebody in the Empire, and that your trucker story is similar to it, but maybe someone higher up who's like, no, I'm doing the right thing. And
it's like, look, we're wearing all white. We're in white.
We can't be villains.
We can't be the bad guys. It's like, yeah, but our commander wears black cape, big black cape with a black mask and a black. It's like, but he's on a respirator.
Yeah, that's it. That's to keep him alive.
He's a disabled man. We support disabled workers.
How can you think he's evil? He's been through so much.
He's lost his legs and his arm. Have you ever seen
that? Was like
it's a mess.
His teacher. It was his teacher.
One of those rebel liberal scum. Professors.
Oh. Anywho, I think
using the story, because one of my favorite things to try to do is find the smallest story in a giant story.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Ice Cream Maker Man.
Yeah.
I would watch that story. You know, I would watch whatever he was doing, because he never saw Luke. He never saw, you know, Darth Vader. He may have seen Darth Vader like way off in the distance. He may have seen the Millennium Falcon. Right. He just grabs his ice cream maker and runs. So, yeah, I think that we are definitely due to tell stories that are small in a universe that is so vast and well known.
Yeah.
Disney Plus, if you're watching, you can tell stories that are not in the straight line that has already been established. I think The Mandalorian proves it, but The Mandalorian is awfully close to that straight line. You can get further away from that line. You can
Rosencrantz and Guildenstern it.
You can go further than Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. You know, you can go to some farmer in Denmark who's never seen Elsinore or the castle. So yeah, I think that I think there's a lot of stories to tell using Star Wars universe, and you can use just the already recognizable elements and never say that you're in the Star Wars universe. You never have to say that you're in that particular fandom. We've actually made it to an hour and 11 minutes.
Boom!
So thank you so much for joining us. It's wonderful seeing you all. Tomorrow we have an Odd Lot show full of improv-anastics. We're going to improvise for you. And we'll hopefully see you then. And thank you very much for joining us. We love having you. We love talking and yakking. And it's social and it's distant. And we're so happy to be given the opportunity. So have a lovely evening. And until next time, we'll slap some more pitches along the way. Ciao bello.